Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call to order the October 18th, 2021 regular Board of Aldermen meeting. Would everybody please join with me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka.
Here.
Alderwoman Tice.
Here.
Alderwoman Sims.
Here.
Alderman Weggie.
Here.
Alderman Gould.
Here.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Here.
Alderwoman O'Neill. Alderman Shelton.
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you, Kelly. Next on the agenda is approval and amendment of the agenda. Do we have any changes, any modifications? Any objection to approving same by acclamation? Yes, Paula?
Thank you, Mayor Dimmitt. I would like to recommend that under new business, Bill 6351 be placed on hold until the November 1st meeting. Staff would like to meet with our consultants to review this item, and then we'll bring it back.
5-1 or 5-2?
Kelly, which one is it? 5-2.
5-2, okay. So can we get a motion to remove item 9B from the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All right. With that in mind, is there any objections to approving the agenda as amended by acclamation? Seeing none, it will be so approved. Thank you. Next on the agenda is citizen comments. And I see we have a lot of people in attendance. Now is the time, if anybody in the audience cares to address the board, I would encourage you to do so. For those of you who've not done this before, it's not really a question and answer session. It is simply an opportunity for you to stand up and make your comment. You will be given up to 3 minutes. So I hope you don't take any offense if you ask questions and you aren't given answers, because if we got involved in that, it would take a really long time to get through this. At the end of that, if the aldermen care to make a response, they certainly would have the opportunity to do so. So again, I would encourage you to, if you want to, just go to the podium, just give your name and your address, just so that we know if you are a resident of Brentwood, and go right ahead.
My name is Marcy Anderson, 2323 Park Ridge Avenue. I'm here tonight to really implore you to consider getting involved in negotiations for the purchase of the green space, some 4 acres in the backside of Mount Calvary Lutheran Church. And I say this understanding that Mount Calvary congregation has yet to vote to actually decide to sell. So I do understand that. And my reasoning for it is that the green space that's already there has been a real asset to the particularly the people on the west side of Brentwood Boulevard. I am a 38-year resident of the west side of Brentwood Boulevard, and this has been our park. And I know that over the years, the city has said, well, you have Tillis. Well, I was an active member or an active parent at McGrath Elementary School and used to chaperone young children to Tillis Park for end-of-the-year parties, and it was terrifying. And I can only imagine what it's like now, and you've been doing traffic studies on there. So that's not really what we're looking for, which is a neighborhood city park. We lost, or passed, the city did on the old Fraser School property some years ago, where we had a chance to put green space in. Here's another chance. Green space doesn't come along very often, and I really do hope that you will go to the table and consider adding this green space to an already wonderful city. And the last thing that I want to point out is that if the land were developed for houses, as was the very first proposal submitted to Mount Calvary, people in the area not only do they not get a park, they lose the green space that they already had. So we're really, in a deficit then in that scenario. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Tom Anderson, and husband. All the data applies. We've got a new development in our neighborhood that we haven't seen for quite a while. And that is, we've got packs of kids running through the streets and through the lawns. And is there a nicer thing in a neighborhood than to have a bunch of kids shouting and yelling and screaming and riding their bikes around and so forth? It is absolutely wonderful to hear that noise and look outside and see 10 kids playing football or kicking the ball or riding their bikes or whatever the case is. It's just been a wonderful thing to see it. And the one thing that troubles me a little bit, though, is they're playing in the street. On the streets, of course, we're all careful of that. They're playing on the sidewalks. They're playing in the small front lawns. Wouldn't it be wonderful if the kids today and for really an endless number of generations forward in Brentwood could have a park that the city could develop from the ground floor up, something that doesn't exist now other than as a green space, as a blank slate that you could draw or paint anything on it that you wanted for the benefit of not only the kids, but adults, people that want to walk their dogs and everything else. It's just such a unique experience. I grew up in small towns, several small towns in Wisconsin and Minnesota. And when those cities got around to putting parks in, often there was no real green space right in town. The park ended up at the edge of town by the industrial park or down by the river or wherever it was. It was never right amongst the houses, so to speak. And here's a chance where a city as old as Brentwood actually has such an opportunity. So I would just say myself as a neighbor, as a resident, that we would certainly favor a park and the use by all the citizens. And your consideration would be appreciated.
Thanks, Tom.
Good evening. My name is Bob Polk. I live at 9369 Parkside Drive. And as a lifelong resident of St. Louis, including Webster, Kirkwood, and De Pere, it's no secret that the city of Brentwood has a very desirable place to live. And as a 5-year resident of Ward 1 in the city of Brentwood, I've come to really appreciate the special appeal of Ward 1. The city of Brentwood is a desirable place to live because of its location, the public amenities, and the overall quality of life. But when I took a look at Ward 1, there's one serious public amenity that's missing, and that's green space. And for that matter, there's no public green space anywhere west of Brentwood and north of Litzinger within the city limits. So that's a big, something big that the city can tackle here. Green space can either be reclaimed, as you're doing with Brentwood Bound, or it can be preserved. And this is an excellent opportunity today to preserve green space, and preserving green space is a much easier approach. So this leads me to what we've already heard here, that Mount Calvary has retained a real estate agent, and there are rumors of impending sale of the property, the large green space at the rear of the property. So I implore the city to open discussions with that agent and the church and see if some reasonable common ground can be reached to preserve this valuable piece of green space within Ward 1. And as I said, it's the only large piece of green space left west of Brentwood and north of Litzinger. So it's a rare opportunity for the city to continue to make Brentwood a more desirable place to live.
Thank you, Bob. Liz?
There, I'm Liz Gallagher. I live at 2315 Park Ridge Avenue, and we've lived there about 20 and a half years, since 2000. So something through all the years we've loved is when the Brentwood High School football team would always walk up Park Ridge and go practice at Mount Calvary, which I don't know that they do anymore. But Brentwood has, to tag onto Tom's comment about all the kids, seem like there are so many more kids using the Brentwood schools these days from our neighborhood, and Brentwood has one field. So I think that's another opportunity if we develop a park and some fields for our own kids to have more places to practice. That's tough, a lot of sports with one field. The other thing, I don't know if you know the Brentwood Swim Club, which is private, they put pickleball courts and a multi, I don't know what else they have, basketball, and it took off like a rocket. Kids are using that all summer long, and it's wonderful for them to have a place to go all summer. Adults love pickleball. Maybe they could be rented out, a shelter rented out, just like people do at Kirkwood. Like I paid to do it. I, wanted to have a birthday party for my daughter, and I paid Clayton, I didn't want to do it at Tillis. So those are all options. Generate some revenue as well as preserving our nice quiet. It's nice to have the quiet. All that noise for all that time would just be so crummy for those of us over there. So thank you for your consideration. Love it to be a park.
Thank you, Liz.
Geis, and like Marcy and Liz, I live just 2337 Park Ridge and back up to the Mount Calvary lot. My kids went to the preschool. We've been there since 1995. I'd like to compare the conversation about green space and this resource, particularly to the ice rink discussion of putting in a fitness center. There are a lot of fitness centers. There aren't a lot of ice rinks. And in Brentwood, there are very few green spaces. And this is by default used very well. When my kids were in youth sports, and my baby's 18, so I'm old, but the fields were so hard to find for practice that my Central Christian School athletic teams would use the Mount Calvary field for practice, and it continued past my involvement as a coach, and that was, the church used the property as a blessing. It's been a wonderful neighbor. But I do, having had recent conversations, it's fairly expensive to maintain. They spend $30,000 a year just, maintaining. We had trees drop on our fence 2 months ago, and, incurring a significant expense to the church. So whether it's a public or private partnership, I'd really like to see it stay as green space, and it's been a blessing to our neighborhood, and it's not just the people that are adjacent to the property. Thank you.
I'm Moss. I live on 9372 Parkside Drive. We have been in our house on Parkside for 46 years, and we loved looking at the green space. We would like to keep the green space. No houses. I'm sorry. I walk at 6:15 in the morning, and there are people walking their dogs over on the parking lot and in the green space, letting them run. It's such a good feeling. So please keep the green space. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Hi, I'm Andy Burkemper, 9387 Pine Avenue in Ward 1. I won't take up too much of your time, but just wanted to echo what other people have said. I think it's a really good opportunity for the city to, it's really the only obvious green space available for park space in Ward 1, north of Manchester and west of Brentwood. And I know it's in the city's master plan to have a park, ideally on that side of Brentwood, and I think it's a really good opportunity to take advantage of that, and it's definitely could be a really good win-win, I think, for both the city and the church. Thanks.
My name is Peter Zuckert. I live at 9000 Bridgeport. Growing up, I lived adjacent to the property on White Avenue. My whole childhood was in that property that we termed the field. We played anything from baseball, golf, soccer, frisbee, flying kites. We had friends that would gather from the whole neighborhood. I met kids that didn't go to my school. It was a community gathering. My family has hosted a rib cook-off in that church area. They've been wonderful to let everyone use it for all this time. So I would just encourage this to remain a green space like everyone else has encouraged it to be, and really think that that would be a great opportunity for the Brentwood to keep that, and is why I moved back to Brentwood and recently purchased a home here. So we really enjoy Brentwood, and that was a big draw for us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kelly Wall. I live at 37 Northcote. I grew up in Brentwood, lived my whole life here. I was on Pine as a child, and just like our prior speaker, grew up playing in the park. Loved the park, spent a lot of time, well, not a park, I shouldn't say a park. We treated it like a park, but it was a church. And we played in their yard. When I moved back into Ward 1, we were on Eulalie prior with 2 children and absolutely loved the 2 parks over there. We had the mommy park and the daddy park. The mommy park was the one down at Broughton Park, right by the library, where we could go easily with the kids. When we wanted to be more adventuresome, we went down to Oak Tree Park, and we walked there all the time. We could have gone to Tillis, but we preferred to be able to go right out our back door and walk to one down in the neighborhood. And when we moved over to Park Ridge with our family, we used the Mount Calvary land repeatedly as a park. We would gather up there with moms from the neighborhood for happy hour, let the kids run wild. We had a lot of fun there. And I think it's a wonderful neighborhood builder. I got to meet parents from Brentwood Public School, which I didn't know since mine were in a parochial school. And it's just been a real institution in the neighborhood for my whole life. And so I would encourage you to consider keeping it like that if possible. Thank you.
Kelly.
Hi, my name is Judy Fox. I'm at 9368 Parkside, and I agree with all the comments about keeping it as open space. The other thing to consider is what the implications are if you actually build on that. There have been lots of drainage problems. MSD had to try to mitigate them. I don't know how well that actually happened, but if you take all that green space and put buildings and concrete on it, it's going to cause problems, and also the traffic onto Litzinger is going to be much heavier. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Gabe Springer. I live at 9324 White Avenue. As I've seen tonight, I'm probably the junior representative of Brentwood. I've only been here just over 2 years. My family and I moved here from a small town in Illinois. I grew up and spent, almost all of my life in that small town. And moving to the St. Louis area, one thing that really held me back from moving to any community was just finding one that I could feel like I was in that community. I was part of a neighborhood. There was a sense of community amongst the groups of people I saw every day. I've found that Brentwood is a fantastic place for that. We've met so many people here. We already, in the 2 years we've been here, feel a very big part of that community. Hope to spend the rest of my life here with my 2 kids, soon to be 3. We live bordering the park. The church they've been fantastic neighbors. It was really a significant draw to buy the house, to have a park in my backyard, essentially. Outside of the liability of my 12-year-old son trying to hit baseballs into the pool, that is on Parkside, and the windows I might have to buy. We've spent a lot of great days there. I imagine with all 3 of my boys, we will spend a lot of active time there, and we see a ton of other families doing the same thing. I'd certainly hope that if it comes to fruition that the city does take into account how important that green space is, and once developed, we'd never be able to get it back. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Welcome, Gabe. And I will tell you, my wife and I have lived for 20 years, and I still feel like a junior member of Brentwood. So you got a long ways to go. The comments do not have to be limited to Mount Calvary and the green space. If you have anything else, feel free to come on up and address the board.
Tim Kleinschmidt, 9328 White Avenue. I would like to echo everyone else's thoughts about Mount Calvary's green space. We back up to it right now. It's a great space. My daughter went to preschool there, loves it. Church has been a great neighbor. One thing that people also point out is that Brentwood has no parks there. It's very difficult for a kid to ride their bikes crossing Manchester, McKnight,
Litzinger even, there's just no parks bordering any of those major streets, and it becomes very dangerous if you have, you know, a grade school kid riding a bike across those streets. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for hearing us out tonight. My name is Bob Loyne. I'm at 9365 Parkside Drive. We've lived there for 20 years, well, almost 20. We built a home there. And I have to amplify Judy Fox's statement with, we certainly need to keep the green space. Everything everyone has said is just, I back all the way. But the consequences that we went through when we first built our house, the water drainage coming off that church's parking lot into all of the people who backed up on it was terrible. I hired a real estate lawyer, and we got involved with the MSD lawyers and really fought these people to get that project done back there. We had a trout stream. Dennis Moss used to come and take pictures between our house and the house next to it. When it rained, you could have a trout stream there. The water was up to your knees. I mean, it was just absolutely horrible the way the water came off of that property and into our properties. We had some of the older neighbors that said they had a duck pond in their backyard. It would flood and the ducks would come and float around the yard. It was absolutely terrible. And it was a battle to get that done by MSD. And I would hope if someone puts homes in there that this isn't going to happen again to us. And the green space is lovely. It's great. All my grandkids have played football, baseball. It's just been wonderful. And I think there are consequences with putting asphalt streets and all this stuff, and they're dumping the water back into our properties again. So I hope that that's considered. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. When McGrath does their school, are they going to be able to have traffic going behind the school? Because you can't get down Litzinger like between, you know, 20 to 3 and when the kids get out. You have to wait in line, and then you have to go in the other lane, and it's kind of treacherous.
Thank you. Kelly, do we have anybody online that wants to? No, okay. Anybody else? Come on down.
Hi, thank you for hearing us out. My name is Amy Layton, and I live at 9344 White Avenue, and I also back up to Mount Calvary. So this was supposed to be a house that we were in for a few years, and we keep staying because of Brentwood and just the community, and just we love everything about it. And at first, we came from Chicago and didn't really love the big green space because we were used to people and neighbors. And I can say that over the years, that has just completely done a 180. And we, like everybody has mentioned, you know, our kids go back there. It's a great place for people to meet. I love when all the kids can come to our place and just kind of go back and make memories. And I also think just on our side of Brentwood, you know, people are like, oh, you have Tillis Park, but it is very different. We have school-age children, and, you know, the traffic is a big deal in our area. And so just having something that they can all go to, and then also just, you know, with Brentwood Bound coming, and it just feels like it would be this little cohesive area where these kids can kind of bop around and have their spot. And you know, we have had water issues. We've had our yard regraded. It's been a whole thing, and you know, we just kind of work with that. So the neighborhood, if they built houses, it does give me some concern on just that level, but more also just from the community level as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, well, I think we'll move on, but before we do, I just want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to come on down and let us hear from you. You know, we're here twice a month, and more often than not, this room is empty. And, you know, we think that's probably a good sign. That means we're doing something right if people aren't here. And you're not here to complain, but even if you were, we would certainly welcome it. But I really do, and I think I speak for everybody up here, we do appreciate you coming here and letting us hear from you. Something that is very frustrating is when we hear people complain on social media or in somebody's backyard, but we never got a chance to hear from them. So it means a lot to us. So thank you again. Alderman Plufka.
Thanks. I just wanted to echo the fact that I really appreciate the fact that so many people have come out tonight, and with the exception of Peter's comments, because my son was one of those kids, and he's now 29, so I thank you for making me feel very old. But no, I think the sentiments are great, and to everybody that talked about what a great neighbor the church has been over the years, it's absolutely true. I mean, from going back to the earliest days that we lived in Brentwood, to them giving their space for a summer park on occasion for kids in Brentwood, to doing just a ton of other things, and they've always been a great neighbor. And the only thing I wanted to add was that, and I don't think I'm saying anything out of turn. I wasn't told by the real estate company or the representatives to not say anything to anybody, but they actually reached out to some of us, the representatives from the church, and they asked us about, what do you think? And they indicated in that phone call that the church has interest in wanting to keep that space serving a public purpose. But the last thing I will tell you is it's going to come down to a vote of that congregation. It's got nothing to do with us. And that congregation will vote, I think, later this year. So it's going to be as important in talking with any of the members of that congregation as it is talking with us, because it's going to start with them. So, but thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you. Okay. And you're certainly welcome to stick around for the rest of this meeting. If you want to leave, feel free to do so. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry.
Wait for public comment, but if everybody's
Yeah.
leaving, if I could make
Yeah, go right
the
ahead.
Alderman comment. I just want to thank everyone for coming tonight. I've talked to a lot of you. We all know how wonderful that land is, and particularly thank Mount Calvary for being such a great neighbor for truly generations. And I'm going to work as hard as I can to, if it is in the church's hands, but if the church does make a decision to sell that land, I will do everything in my power to work with my colleagues on this board to keep it green space. So thank you, everybody, for being here, and even those who weren't. So thank you.
Well said.
Okay. Let's move on to the next item, which is the mayor and alderman reports. First up is the mayor, and I have just one item, and that is the appointment of a provisional judge. The way we have the code provides for and actually requires a provisional judge, and the prior provisional judge was Mike Daming. He moved months ago, and so that space has remained vacant, and that has been brought to my attention. So I'd like to get that filled as soon as possible. And the person that I've come up with thanks to Alderman Jack Shelton, is Katie Markinson. You have her resume on board docs. She's a young attorney. She is a Ward 4 resident. Alderwoman O'Neill, I thought that would make you happy as well.
It does.
Yeah. And I spoke with her on Friday. She is very excited about this opportunity. She comes highly recommended by an attorney that most of us know, Will Goldstein. And so with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the appointment of Katie Markinson as provisional judge.
So moved. Second.
Okay, any discussion on that? Do we need a roll call vote on that, Kevin, or is voice vote good enough? Voice is good. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Next up, Alderman Plufka.
No report.
Alderwoman Tice.
No report.
Alderwoman Sims.
It is the most wonderful time of the year, budget season, which means Ways and Means has multiple special meetings scheduled in addition to our regular meetings, which occur on the first Thursday of the month. And the first special meeting that we will have is Thursday, October 28th, 5:30 in this room. So please join us. We're going to be talking about the budget. That's it.
Thank you. Alderman Gould, or Weggie.
Since Sonny gave me the opportunity, we're going to have a Ward 2 meeting on November 8th at 6 p.m. in the Rec Center. Unfortunately, we couldn't get City Hall, so our residents will have to wait a little bit longer to see the improvements. And then I would just like to thank Dan for setting up a tour of our single stream recycling on Friday. So we took the Sustainability Commission and several Alder people came as well. I thought it was, believe it or not, a quite fascinating trip. It was like Willy Wonka's factory for trash. So, I learned a lot, and I came away feeling much better about our recycling program. So thanks a lot, Dan, for doing that.
All right, thank you. Alderman Gould.
Yes, thank you. The Ward 3 meeting that we were supposed to have last month got pushed to this month, so that will be October 26th, 7 p.m. via Zoom.
Alderman Lockmuller.
Public Safety Committee will meet here Wednesday, October 27th at 5:30, and it can be watched virtually also.
Alderman Shelton.
No report.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Yes, I'd like to give a belated shout out to Jason, even though he's not here tonight. The many Ways and Means meetings and other meetings we had kept asking him for more and more information. And if we did this or if we did that, what would happen? And he always came through. He had it. He could clearly explain it. And he didn't begrudge his time. He was just really professional in everything he did, and we owe him a great deal of thanks for that.
Thank you. Next up, City Administrative Report. We have 4 items. The first is the report by Kerber, Eck, and Breckel, and I think John Schnurr is on this. Is that right? John, the floor is yours. We can't hear you. There we go.
Okay. Our firm was engaged upon to perform the agreed upon procedures on the expenditure of the certificate of participation proceeds of the City of Brentwood from April 1st, 2021 through June 30th of 2021. And for the Series 2018 certificates of participation, which were requests numbered 76 through 80, there were 73 invoices totaling over $7.2 million. The first procedure we tested was to compare invoices paid to signed contracts with various consultants approved by the Board of Aldermen. Our findings were that the signed contracts were reviewed for all invoices with the exception of those purchases made from sole source providers, purchases made on the open market with a value of less than $2,000, or purchases requiring a quick turnaround as allowed under that purchasing code of the selection of professional services. So no exceptions were noted with that procedure. On the next procedure, we determined if the City of Brentwood's policies and internal controls were being followed, and exceptions were noted in which capital forms were not completed prior to the disbursement for 49 of these 73 invoices, totaling roughly 1.6 million. However, we did note that all these disbursements that had these capital forms not completed were subsequent to the communication of our last quarter's same finding, where those capital forms had not been completed prior to disbursement. So the finding is resolved as of this report's date. We also noted that these invoices, with the exceptions above, had properly approved check request forms, and all other required city policies and internal controls were followed. The next procedure, we examined invoices for proper payments allowed by the official statement of the certificate of participation. We compared all 73 invoices to that official statement, and no exceptions were noted. For the Series 2019 certificates of participation, we did the same procedures. And that first one, we noted no exceptions. And then the second one, where we examined those invoices, we noted that capital form exception again. But once again, this was where that all the disbursements subsequent to our communication of our last quarter's same finding had that capital form completed now. So the finding was resolved as of this report's date. And the last procedure for that Series 2019, where we examined those invoices for proper payments, there were no exceptions noted. We were engaged by the Board of Aldermen and the mayor to perform this agreed upon procedures engagement and conducted our engagement in accordance with the attestation standards established by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. And we were not engaged and did not conduct an examination or review engagement, the objective of which would be the expression of an opinion or conclusion, respectively, on the expenditures of the certificate of participation proceeds. Accordingly, we did not express such an opinion or conclusion. And lastly, I would like to reiterate my thanks to the mayor and the Board of Aldermen for providing me the opportunity to present our report today. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Do we have any questions for Mr. Schnurr? Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, under City Administrator Report is a Brentwood Bound update.
Craig Schluter is on vacation tonight, so we will hold off until the November 1st meeting for the Brentwood Bound update.
Thank you. Next up is the warrant list notation.
So once again, this item, bill number 6351, under new business, is on the agenda for your consideration tonight. This is the West Hill settlement payment of $100,000. And the reason why we're highlighting this is because the board will be voting on the warrant list before you actually vote on the ordinance. So we're just making you aware of that.
Any questions for the city administrator about that? Okay. The last thing under City Administrator Report is the request for indemnification.
In your packet this evening is also a request from former Mayor Chris Thornton asking the Board of Aldermen for indemnification pursuant to Section 115.010 of the Brentwood Code. He's requesting that his legal expenses and attorney's fees incurred as a result of this investigation be paid to him.
Okay, thank you. And as the city administrator mentioned, there were some documents that were provided, and I just wanted to mention one thing, and that is in his September 30th letter, in the first paragraph, which again is written by former Mayor Chris Thornton, he says, "I am writing to request indemnification of legal expenses and attorney's fees incurred in connection with an investigation conducted by the Assistant U.S. Attorney for Eastern District of Missouri and the Federal Bureau of Investigation from January 2019 through May 2021. It is my understanding that in addition to myself, members of the Board of Aldermen and the City Administrator may also have been under investigation at that time. I can assure you, and I can assure everybody watching this, that at no point in time was any member of the Board of Aldermen under investigation by the FBI or the United States Attorney's Office. And that's all I care to say about that. Alderman Plufka.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And in addition to that misstatement in the letter, there's another comment which I think bears on the question, although maybe I'm out of order here in terms of, does there have to be some sort of a motion to consider his request for reimbursement before we have a discussion on it, or can we have a discussion?
The matter is on the table as a part of the agenda, but there is not a motion on the floor for a specific action to be taken.
Is it okay for me to speak on it then, or not really?
Go ahead.
Okay. So so my concern is a little bit farther down in the same letter. He said that he had reason to believe that he was being investigated due to the fact that he was serving as an elected official in the city of Brentwood. I don't think that we can even consider his request for reimbursement until we become somewhat assured of that fact. And even then, I don't know if I'm in favor of reimbursing him for those expenses, but I sure as heck am not interested in having much of a conversation about it until we can be somewhat assured. And I believe that he can provide us, if I'm not mistaken, he can request a transcript of the grand jury testimony that he gave, I would imagine, and provide that to us as a body. Is that true, do you think?
I'm not aware that an individual can obtain a copy of the transcript of the grand jury.
Is there any way that it is discoverable? Okay. Well, so okay, that was my idea, that we were going to somehow assure ourselves by actually reading some source material as to what the nature of the investigation was. Because even in his own letter, in his own language, he says, I have reason to believe. He's not even certain in his letter. I don't believe that this body should take up the request unless we can be provided some information from other than Chris, that the fact of his role as mayor was somehow the subject of the investigation.
Okay, and I will represent to Alderman Plufka that Rule 6 of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure sets out, I believe, 4 exceptions, how the contents of the grand jury investigation can be made public. And
So what are they?
well, I know one of them is by the person who was the target of that investigation. I just don't know off the top of my head what the circumstances are for that person to get that. Under what circumstances they can request it. But I do know Rule 6 of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure does set out the exceptions to that general rule that the city attorney mentioned, that that it's not public information.
So, okay. So can I make a motion that we investigate the exceptions within that rule and find out whether or not it's possible to request either from Chris or directly from the United States Attorney's Office a transcript of the investigation?
I don't know, do we need a motion for that effect, or is that something we just ask
You certainly can, and I'd be happy to see what I can find out.
staff? Okay,
So I would make that motion.
okay. Anybody care to second that motion?
Second.
Okay, so we got a motion by Alderman Plufka, second by Alderman Lockmuller to authorize staff to investigate under what circumstances, if any, the contents of that investigation can be made public. Any discussion on that motion? Roll call, please. Sorry, Kelly.
That's okay. Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill?
Yes.
Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
Motion carries. by a
Thank
vote of
you.
8 to 0.
Alderman Sheldon, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, no, I think we've kind of created that, but as a new person on the board, this is kind of the first I'm hearing of anything, and so I guess an open-ended question, we don't have any information as what the investigation is, and I guess that's kind of what that last motion was, to get some detail, so I wouldn't feel comfortable moving forward without, at least in the information we provided, I don't even know what the investigation is about, so it's my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Alderwoman Tice.
Well, I have a question. Is there, a nonprofit board would have like director's insurance. Is there insurance that would cover some sort of legal liability that if it is a result of the former mayor's serving as mayor, would the city's insurance investigate and then cover such a thing?
I don't know with certainty the entire answer to your question, but we do have public officials' errors and omissions insurance coverage for the entire board.
That might be something we would like, we might want to get an answer to as well. You know, if there's an errors and omissions policy, would that come into effect here, even though Chris is not a public official now, but to the extent the investigation related to his role as a public official, is there a possibility that that policy would provide some type of coverage or reimbursement?
Certainly take a look at that issue as well, but I think we can response we may find, and that is
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that it would have been better to take this up earlier, before
have a
there's,
duty to notify the carrier of a claim.
yeah, before the $13,000 is incurred. Right. And presumably they would have had an opportunity, if there was coverage, to appoint a law firm to assist in that. Okay, anybody else? All right, well then, I think at this point, there's really nothing more to do on that matter, with the exception of just hearing back from our city attorney on pursuant to the motion by Alderman Plufka. And with that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'd like to make a motion to have this tabled to
Only up to the board. Board have a preference on that? Do you want to have an actual motion to table this, or just wait to?
don't table, it will be on the next agenda.
Okay, If we don't table, it will be on the next agenda. Alderman Weggie.
Yeah, I mean, apparently a motion is not necessary, but I think we should take this up at the next meeting. I don't know how long it would take for us to determine if we can get more information. I mean, it's quite concerning that there would be an investigation of our mayor that he feels is due to him being the mayor, and I think we should do everything we can to get that information, but it shouldn't take that long, and I think we need to get to the bottom of this and the end of this as quickly as we can.
Okay.
Tell you, I will be on vacation at your next meeting. I will be here, we will get you.
Great. So unless there is a motion to table this, then we will just take this up at the next Board of Aldermen meeting. I see no motion, so we will move on. Thank you. That brings us to the consent agenda. We have 7 items under that. Are there any questions about any of these items or any requests to remove any of these items from the consent agenda? Seeing none, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka.
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice.
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims.
Yes.
Alderman Weggie.
Yes.
Alderman Gould.
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Yes.
Alderman Shelton.
Yes.
Motion carries by a vote of 8-0.
Thank you. We have no old business, brings us down to new business. We only have 2 items since we removed item 9B. First up is Bill number 6351. Can we get a first reading by title only, please?
Bill number 6351, first reading, an ordinance of the City of Brentwood, Missouri, approving certain settlement agreement with West Hill Properties LLC, authorizing certain other actions in connection therewith, providing for the effective date of this ordinance, and containing a severability clause.
Thank you. And Bola? Mark?
Mark Murray.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the Board of Aldermen. Mark Murray here to talk to you about Bill 6351. You may recall we talked earlier this year in closed session about trying to pursue a settlement with West Hill Properties LLC. They actually came back to us and said, yes, we would like to do that after all. It's for the number we talked about in closed session, $100,000. That's not $100,000 of new money. That's $50,000 of the Commissioner's Award, which we previously paid, plus an additional $50,000 payment. About the only other thing that is a new item to this that was not discussed previously was they've requested that we release a temporary easement we no longer need in their property, and so that is a part of this as well.
Okay. Any questions for Mark? Okay, and we would like to have a second reading of this bill tonight, so we can get a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion for a second read, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. City Attorney, can we get a second read of Bill 6351 by title only, please?
Bill number 6351, second reading and consideration for adoption, an ordinance of the City of Brentwood, Missouri, approving a certain settlement agreement with West Hill Properties LLC, authorizing certain other actions in connection therewith, providing for the effective date of this ordinance, and containing a severability clause.
Thank you. Chair would entertain a motion to perfect Bill number 6351 into ordinance form.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Alderman Plufka.
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice.
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims.
Yes.
Alderman Weggie.
Yes.
Alderman Gould.
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill. Alderman Shelton.
Yes.
Okay, by a vote of 8-0, the bill will be perfected into ordinance form, ordinance number 4986.
Thank you. Brings us to Bill number 6353. Can we get a first reading of Bill 6353 by title only, please?
Bill number 6353, first reading, an ordinance approving a final subdivision plat of a parcel located at 8817 Powell Avenue into 2 single-family residential lots.
Thank you. Whitney handling this?
Whitney Kelly, Director of Planning and Development for the City of Brentwood. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this proposal on October 13th. Both properties conform with the B single-family district, and therefore they recommended approval. The applicant is here if you have any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for either the applicant or, yes, Alderman Weggie?
Whitney, do you know what the vote from P and Z was on this?
It was a unanimous vote.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Alderman Lockmuller.
Motion for a second read.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor of Alderman Lockmuller's motion for second read indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Can we get a second read of Bill 6353 by title only, please?
Bill number 6353, second reading and consideration for adoption, an ordinance approving a final subdivision plat of a parcel located at 8817 Powell Avenue into 2 single-family residential lots.
Thank you. Motion to perfect Bill 6353 in ordinance form, please.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
Okay, bill will be perfected, by a vote of 8-0, bill will be perfected into ordinance form, ordinance number 4987.
Thank you. Brings us down to citizen comments. We have nobody in the audience. Do we have anybody online, Kelly?
No, sir.
Okay. That gets us down to the final item, which is closed meeting. We do need, we would like to go into closed meeting. I'm asking your permission to do so pursuant to RSMO 610.021 subsections 1, 2, and 3, and to adjourn therefrom.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on going into closed motion? Roll call.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
Motion carries by a vote of 8-0.
Thank you. Now let's reconvene.